It is Monday, folks. Here we are, back and ready on the Chris Richman Show for more outstanding podcast. So let's get right to it, because boy, are we loaded up today. Holy cow, I cannot tell you. This weekend has been absolutely, completely, utterly mental. I mean, I've got the amount of stuff I have loaded up here, sorry for the poor English, is just insane. I was telling my wife that I says, oh, Monday's going to be a banger. And she goes, what? And I says, look at all the stuff in the news. So anyway, it's good to be back. I had a good weekend, lots of stuff done, but got to see some family I hadn't seen in a while. So that was always good. It is always good. Hopefully get to do more of that here in the near future. But again, glad to be back with y'all here. I love y'all. I appreciate all the support. So thank you. Thank you so much for that. All right. Let's get to it, because like I said, there is a ton of stuff to talk about today. I mean, a ton. We're going to start off. Let me see if I can even get back to it here. There's so much stuff. Wow. Here we go. Let's see here. So I want to start off with an article out of Slate. And this article, it's funny. The headline of it is, American cities are experiencing something we haven't seen since the 1960s. Now, my first thought, of course, being a quasi student of history. I mean, I would by no means say I am awesome at it by any stretch of the imagination or an expert. My hope one day is to have a young man, when it comes to Civil War, very, very knowledgeable on that, has a degree from University of Virginia. So I hope to have him on someday about that area. But in terms of my own stuff, not even close to an expert. But when I see the 60s, I'm thinking, is this something related to race? Because let's face it, that was one of the things the 60s was known for. Was a lot of racial unrest. And in the case of like elections, one of the things the 60s were known for, especially 1960, was the dead voting. I mean, Richard Daley, right, out of Chicago. Oh, look at that. Kennedy wins on the dead voting. Weird. So I was kind of thinking it was maybe something like that. Well, no, it's actually not. Let's see here. The actual title is A Farewell to Arms. This was in Slate, again, published on the 7th. With some American cities seeing their lowest murder numbers in decades, will Donald Trump change his tune? Now, of course, my first thought is what tune are we talking about here? I mean, are we talking about he's going to ask for more deregulation when it comes to firearms? What is he talking about? Well, let's see what Slate says, shall we? Because this is a fairly short article, thankfully. 19 people were killed in Chicago last month, which is the fewest murders in the Windy City has experienced since during any April since 1962. In Baltimore, there were just 5 murders in April, the lowest number in any month since 1970. 3 other major cities, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, and Detroit, recorded their fewest first-quarter homicides since the 1960s. Criminologists tend to speak in caveats, with warning of reversion to the mean and admonitions to wait for better data, but even they must admit, these are some eye-catching numbers. Quote, "It's really encouraging," said John Roman, a crime researcher at the University of Chicago's National Opinion Research Center. Crime researcher, and he works for an opinion research center? It's worth taking a moment and noting that we are approaching the numbers in most crime statistics we haven't seen since the 1960s. In these cities, if you're under 55, this is probably the safest moment you've ever lived in. That's great, and it should be celebrated. The early 2025 crime decline builds off numbers from 2023 and 2024 and appears to include not just homicide, but also robberies, rapes, burglaries, and auto theft. In many respects, we are returning to a pre-COVID world of public safety, with profound implications for residents of neighborhoods tormented by gun violence, the police who are supposed to solve the problem, and the politicians who love to campaign on the issue. Okay, so I'm going to stop for just a second there. Let's parse that just a little bit here, especially that last paragraph. So we're 3 paragraphs in here. Builds off numbers, the 2025 crime decline builds off numbers from 2022 and 2023. Or 2023 and 2024, excuse me. And again, less across the board. Now, profound implications, returning to a pre-COVID world of public safety. So you're saying, Slate, that COVID made the world more dangerous. Is that what you're telling us? Is that COVID increased crimes? But how could that be? Because during a lot of COVID, Plugs was president, and I thought Plugs, made everything better. I thought that people being at home wouldn't have time to commit crimes or, homicides or robberies, rapes, burglaries, and auto theft. I didn't think they were able to do that because everybody was so scared of COVID that they were inside. So isn't that interesting? Now they're saying that COVID was dangerous. Huh, weird. So let's read what their opinion is on the cause, shall we? Why is this happening? Roman, that's the John Roman, the researcher they talked to. Roman offered some theories. First, local and community governments have finally surpassed pre-pandemic staffing levels after weathering giant job losses in 2020. So his main thing is, let's see here. These are local police, teachers in public schools and community colleges, counselors, coaches, clinicians, people who run the programs that support all kinds of community-based and nonprofit organizations. These are people who essentially work with people directly at risk of being victims of or involved in crime. So his theory is government is the reason why it's back, because the government now is fully staffed. That's why Chicago and all these other big cities are reducing their crime levels. It's because of government, you see. Government's doing that. Oy. The second hypothesis, going back to the article here, the second hypothesis is also COVID-related, but different. During shutdowns, illegal drug markets were disrupted by the upheaval of users' daily routines. Roman says, people get drugs in a lot of places, work, school, bars, and nightclubs. A lot of these avenues during COVID were closed, but there was also a big demand shock to the drug markets. That disruption led to a cycle of violence that may now have run its course. Oh, boy. Okay, so let me see if I get this. Illegal drug markets being disrupted so people not being able to get drugs per se means a more violent society? Okay. A lot of these avenues during COVID were closed. So work, school, bars, and nightclubs. And there was a big demand to the drug market, and that led to violence. So you notice one thing they say here, that because people couldn't do drugs, that creates more violence. Anybody else see a little bit of a problem with that? Think that maybe that just maybe doesn't make a lot of sense? Then, okay, let's keep reading because I don't want to get off into the weeds too much on that part or we'll never finish this. Then there were a handful of changes in policing, which resulted in fewer arrests during this time. You don't say. Defund the police, for example? That was y'all's y'all liberals, that was your big thing during the early COVID time, right? So 2020 and into 2021, fewer police, right? We don't need that. We have to have, you don't understand, Chris, we have to have caring. You can't just go in and arrest people and protect, and expect that's actually going to change lives. No, we have to have counselors and we have to have
people that will go in and de-escalate a situation. We need to have more understanding and less police. Don't you understand that?
Oy. Which resulted in fewer arrests during this time. 2022 saw the least civilian contacts with police since '08. These changes were largely due to how police adopted anti-COVID protocols that reduced interaction with the public and the surge in police retirements. Yeah, it wasn't COVID that did that, you morons. It was the anti-police thing. It was people, it was liberal governors and liberal city councils and liberal politicians in general saying, hey, you police are a bunch of scumbags because we put it out there that you killed George Floyd. And so all police are evil, even though Derek Chauvin didn't kill George Floyd, but that's, a topic for a different day. All police are evil. So we're going to defund police departments. We're going to make sure that you guys don't have the equipment necessary to actually do your jobs. And when you do actually do your jobs, we're going to come after you and say that you're a bunch of racist, sexist, homophobic, bigoted pigs. And so the people who had been there, who, for their 20 years or whatever it is, who already had full pensions and were training the people coming up, the ones that actually knew how to do policing per se, said, yeah, I'm not losing my pension. I'm not losing all this stuff, all this, goodwill and all the people I've met. I'm not losing them. I'm not losing my entire livelihood because some pompous windbag up in City Hall wants to make a point, so they can get elected to another term or maybe get elected to a first term. No, I'm done. I'm turning in my badge rather. Sorry, turning their gun, but I'm turning in my badge. I'm putting in my papers and I'm retiring. And oh, by the way, the unions really didn't get on board with this either. They didn't really do a lot to help. So if you're a police officer and you can't count on elected politicians to be with you, which, okay, that's kind of commonplace, I guess. But if you can't even count on the police union, which is supposed to have your back to protect you, why would you want to be there? Why would you want to put yourself in harm's way? You go out and let's say your beat, right, or your area is not the best in the city. Okay, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of run-ins, there's a lot of at-risk youth, that kind of thing. So instead of going out there and maybe you run into something where in the past, if you had to draw your service weapon, say, or maybe you even had to use it, but you could count on the fact that, hey, you know what, I will be able to, as long as this was a legit shoot, I'm good. I can count on that. But now you're looking at that and you're saying, wow, okay, so if I have to draw my weapon and use it, God forbid, the only thing I can count on right now is that the DA is going to come after me with everything they have. My commissioner, who was just elected, who is a political appointee to be, to be sure, who is a hack, isn't going to have my back. And the police union, which should have my back, isn't going to do a damn thing because they're scared to death of what the politicians will do to their leadership. Yeah, no, I'm out. That's why, this surge in police retirements, they don't even talk about. Okay, here we go. Actually, they do refer to it here just a little bit. But it was quickly politicized. Conservatives called this the BLM effect and blamed criminal justice reformers and big city mayors for trying to defund police. Yeah, we did, because you did. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Senator Tom Cotton wrote of a, quote, vice grip of extremism. As city halls abandoned or even opposed their own police forces in 2020, violent rioters and common criminals alike were abandoned. Liberals felt police had stepped back from doing their jobs in an apparent attempt to humiliate elected officials who were aligned with the protest movement, and pointed out that funding for police actually increased in almost every major city. Okay, let's talk about that. First of all, maybe it was, hey, you know what? You want us to respond to a call in your gated community, which is super, luxurious? Yeah, we'll get to it after we deal with all the ones downtown. That, maybe. But funding increases? Yeah, you know what those funding increases were?
Again, we have to hire more psychiatrists. We have to hire more people to talk with these people and, just help them understand that life can be tough sometimes. And, talking is the best way to deal with these serial killers and serial rapists and whatnot.
We'll get back to that, by the way, later today. Out of Seattle, fun person running around now because of judicial ineptitude, shall we say. Anyway, let's keep going here. It's hard to establish easy causal explanations for crime trends. Really? Really? Is it? Because I'm willing to bet if this would have been in a liberal, or if this would have been in a, if it had been an increase in a conservative city, you guys would be all about trying to explain it, wouldn't you? Then you'd point at things like, well, it's this. Clearly it's this. It's this over here and it's this. This is obviously what's causing it, Chris. Duh. But when it's something that goes against your preferred establishment view, no, then it's, well, we just don't know why it's happening. This is so weird. All right. While studies show that police presence does reduce crime. No, really? Much of this decline has happened despite the fact that police departments have had trouble filling out their ranks. In Nolens, for example, the city committed $80 million to hire more police in 2022, but had fewer officers last year than at any point since the 1940s, more than 30% behind targets. Gee, I can't imagine why. $80 million, and you're hiring kids who don't have a frickin' clue how to do police work. Like I said, they're hiring therapists. They're hiring people who want, woke justice. They aren't actually there to enforce the law. And a lot of people that, again, have been around for 10, 15, 20 or more years are going, to hell with this. I'm not going to be involved in this crap where if I walk over to a female officer and say, wow, Kelly, you look really nice today, I get sued for sexual harassment. All I did was say she looks really nice today. Or if I go and make an arrest, as a white man, if I go and make an arrest on a black person, even if I have body camera footage and that person says I'm a racist, I'm going to be taken off the streets for a while, even if it's very cut and dried in the body cam footage that it was a legit arrest. And again, God forbid I actually have to use my, issued sidearm. Sweet mother of Pete, I will be up a creek without a paddle. I mean, good God, how stupid do these people have to be? Yet homicides still dropped to their lowest number since 1971. And this year's pace is lower still, despite 14 people being murdered on Bourbon Street in a terrorist attack on New Year's Day. Okay, so this is, there's still quite a bit to read here, but I want to just, let me put it to you this way. No, you know what? I am going to read it. I am. Indeed, let's see here. Where are we? It's new that we're able to measure changes in crime so much faster. No, it's not. For the ability to understand it and explain it, we're grasping at ideas. Then you're an idiot, admits Jeff Asher, a crime data analyst in New Orleans. You're a crime data. Okay, so when you see analyst, or I said analyst. Wow, analyst. Sorry, guys. If you're an analyst, you're probably making a pretty healthy chunk of change because that's a consulting job. And so I wonder whether I could become an analyst, which is kind of what I'm doing now, I guess, and could get paid that much. I don't know, because I could probably figure this out way quicker than Jeffy here could. We've had a huge drop in crime, no change in police staffing, and clearance rates are still low. Clearance is when police solve crimes. The great crime decline of the 90s wound up being explained by, among other things, access to abortion and the decline of leaded gasoline. Who knows what theories hindsight will bring? Wow. So they're saying that the crime decline of the 90s was due to abortion, partially at least due to abortion and leaded gasoline. being gutted. How is this published? I'm curious. What, as an editor, what in the hell? I mean, oh, I can go kill my kid. I can go have relations with anybody I want with no consequence whatsoever. I'm so happy. I'm not ever going to kill anybody in my life. But guess what? Access to abortion. So actually, I wonder if they factored that into their murder rates, right? I'm just curious. Did they? Because if they did, I'm willing to bet the murder rate actually went up, weirdly enough. And leaded gasoline? Seriously? Really? We're going to play that game? Really? Lord. If indeed our current Pax Urbana, that's urban peace for those of you who don't speak Latin, is the product of increased spending from the pandemic recovery bills, which it's not, Asher expressed concern that the end of those federal outlays, combined with new cuts coming out of Washington, would leave communities in a worse position to respond should the trend be reversed. In addition to expiring funds from the American Rescue Plan Act, the Trump administration has cut money from programs like the Rural Violent Crime Reduction Initiative. Okay, so now, way the hell, 4 paragraphs from the bottom of the story, we finally get into the purpose of the story. It's not about crime reduction. This is a hit piece on Trump and the federal government cutting funding. Why? Because now, you've had the worst or the lowest crime rates supposedly since the 60s. So now, when that goes up, maybe next year, maybe 2 years from now, whatever, if it goes up during, like I said, they have one more murder, one. Now, Slate could come back and say, see, when we reduce funding to government, oh my gosh, murders go up, rapes go up, all this stuff goes up because of Trump, the evil orange Hitler, literal orange bad. Oh God, he's so terrible. That's what this is. It's a hit piece. Finally, we get to it. 4 paragraphs from the bottom, we finally get to the real reason the story is there. Okay? Then there's the question of how this ongoing crime decline might intersect with local and national politics. The anti-crime backlash unseated progressive prosecutors empowered the campaigns of pro-police candidates like New York City's Eric Adams, who frequently railed against the city's dangerous streets even after becoming its mayor. Now that mantle has been taken by former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who's running for Adams' job on a platform of hiring 5,000 more police officers. Okay, so here's the thing. Cuomo was governor during, this is the thing they don't put on here because it's inconvenient. Cuomo was governor during a lot of this anti-police stupidity and police hate, as it were. So I hope whoever's running against him will bring that up. Well, gee, Governor Cuomo, isn't it interesting you're running on hiring more police officers now, but during COVID, and during the Floyd thing, you were right on board with defund the police. And if you weren't actively for it, you tacitly approved of it by not shutting down your party when they called for that. Huh, weird. For Donald Trump, America's status, back to the article here, America's status as a crime-ridden wasteland is an axiom that justifies his whole political reason for being. Crime-ridden wasteland. America's status? No. Slate, I'm sorry. The only parts that he has said are crime-riddled wastelands, S-holes, I believe, at one point they were called, is cities like, well, they mentioned Detroit here, and bigger cities like Portland, Seattle, Chicago, New York, LA, San Francisco. I mean, that's what he's referring to. Those are the crime-ridden wastelands. Montana, not crime-ridden. Idaho, not crime-ridden. Right? You look at Washington State. Yeah, we're becoming one of the worst in the nation in terms of crime because we have a corrupt governor, because we have corrupt bureaucrats. We have a Democrat majority in both houses of our legislature. So yeah, and they are implementing every policy they can to make it so that crime flourishes here. All right. Let's see here. As the GOP nominee, he denied the changing crime data during a debate with Kamala Harris and later told an audience in Detroit, "You can't walk across the street to get a loaf of bread. You get shot, you get mugged, you get raped." As president, he has invoked crime to justify much of his agenda. From illegal deportations, you mean deporting illegals? I think you had the words backwards there, Slate. I'm just wondering. To tariffs, which are permitted under the president's claim of a fentanyl-driven national emergency. So Slate just made the claim right there that we don't actually have a fentanyl problem. That would be news to pretty much everybody who is involved in a city where fentanyl has become, well, a problem, like the cities I just mentioned, and parts of the country where it's not in the big city. Fentanyl is a serious problem, and yet Slate doesn't think so, apparently. It's possible Trump could try to take credit for the good news by pointing to his record on border security and deportations, despite the fact that, as Julia Gillot at the Migration Policy Institute, I wonder how much money they're getting from the government, reminded me, immigrants, those with permanent legal status or otherwise, commit crimes and are incarcerated at a lower rate than U.S. citizens are. You don't say. I wonder why that would be. Now, I've been trying to kind of hold off on mentioning this until now. But let's get finished with the story here. We got a paragraph and a half left. And then we'll talk about the real reason why, or one of the reasons why these crime numbers are down in 23, 24, and this year. Let's keep going. Let's see here. Lower rate than U.S. citizens are. That's not to say that immigration crackdown won't have an effect. There has been a broad diversion of all kinds of law enforcement resources towards immigration, unquote, she noted. With human trafficking investigators, U.S. attorneys, and FBI agents all diverted to focus on immigration violations instead of serious crimes. So Slate's arguing that immigration violation is not a serious crime. Coming into the country illegally is not a serious crime. Interesting. Trump's attack on mixed status households and marshaling of local police as immigration enforcers might also deter immigrants from reporting crimes as either witnesses or victims. Okay. I'm going to keep my powder dry for just a little bit more here. That won't be an issue for murders, but it could affect logging of crimes like robbery and domestic violence. A more likely outcome, this is more likely. Okay, we need to listen to this, right? A more likely outcome is that Trump will never notice. Most people in the president's orbit have been in denial about the crime drop, mired in conspiratorial thinking about FBI statistics, and laser focused on demonizing immigrants for grisly murders. At the beginning of the drop in 2023, more than 90% of Republicans mistakenly believed that crime was on the rise. Interestingly, Americans were almost 4 times more likely to say crime is a problem nationally than they are to say it's a problem for themselves personally. We're a nation that consumes a lot of videos of people doing crimes. There may be fewer crimes these days, but the video just keeps getting better. Okay. We're going to take a quick music break here. And when we're back, we'll go ahead and break this down because, wow, there is a lot of stuff to parse out of this. So we'll take a music break and we'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. So let's go ahead and break this idiotic Slate article down because as with a lot of articles lately, the truth is so undeniable that Slate can't not say something about it. But they never quite get to the actual truth. They never quite get to the underlying cause. They'll dance around it, but they won't quite get to it. So let's go ahead and talk about that right now. So, it's, if you notice, they left the major part of the immigration thing till the last two paragraphs. You know, they mixed it in a while ago, or in the top part of it rather, but they don't really get into it until that second to last paragraph. Okay. And here's the thing. You look at 23, you look at 24, and you look at 25. Now, I'm going to say there's several reasons that they don't mention here. Yes, immigration is a big one. And if you look at 2025 so far, you cannot, under any circumstances, deny the fact that these criminals who happen to be here illegally, okay, either intentionally or not, well, no, it's no unintentional, but illegal alien criminals who are here, and maybe they're not, how shall I put this? Maybe they are wanting to stay here. Maybe they're trying to fly under the radar a little bit. Or maybe they have been good boys and girls and don't want to get caught. Yeah, that is giving them a moment of pause. They are thinking, gee, I could go commit this crime, but there's a chance I'll get picked up, and then wherever I'm incarcerated at, they are going to work with ICE, and guess what? I'm on a flight out of the country. Maybe to that wonderful, nice, horrible prison that I don't want to be anything near in El Salvador. Maybe that place, right? I honestly think that has scared a lot of people, seeing these, supposed hardcore gangbangers being treated as so much chattel in El Salvador. That's when you see someone who's hard, and I'm using air quotes, and they're dropped down to, walking with their bent over with their heads down so they can't be identified. That's a deterrent. They're not in control. So that's number one. Number two, we cannot, under any circumstances, one of the reasons why the Republicans, they talk about the Republicans saying that, the crime rate was on the rise. They mistakenly believe that. No, actually, they didn't mistakenly believe that. It was on the rise. It's just that in places like Los Angeles and others where, oh, well, we're not going to consider it a crime until it hits $1,000 in terms of theft, right? And, and so people stop calling it in. They know the law. These shop owners, these criminals and whatnot, they plan this out. Oh, well, I only took $900 worth of stuff. They're not going to do anything. Shop owner's not going to do anything. Okay. So criminals, for all their madness, are not stupid. So again, they're planning that out better, and it's being reported less. In terms of people not reporting it, here again, if you live in, let's say you live in one of these communities that's crime ridden, right? And you hear gunshots down the street. Maybe you've gotten so used to it, and maybe you know that because there's so few police, right? So police do have an effect. You don't even bother to call the police because you know it's going to be hours before they even get here, if they get here at all. That's a big thing. Those folks right there, I wish they would have asked that question, and maybe they did and they just didn't report it, is how confident are you in a police response to a call for help? How confident are you? I'd be willing to bet, if you looked at it, the confidence in the police force and the prosecutors to actually do their jobs is at an all-time low. And when you don't report crimes, did they actually happen? It's one of those tree falls in the forest things, right? And of course, again, the liberals will love that. Oh, well, we didn't have much crime this year. Yeah, because none of it was reported. Whoops. All right. Let's look at the third leg of that. So don't underestimate the effect of decisions like Bruin. If, again, we go back to the London scenario, right? If I know there's going to be little to no resistance, if I want to commit a crime, I'm going to commit that crime. That is going to happen. There is very little incentive for me not to do it. However, if I know that, or there's at least a decent chance that the people in my neighborhood, or in the neighborhood that I live, rather, are carrying firearms with them, or, maybe either legally or not. But if they come under the thing of, well, you know what? I can put in for a permit now, and it has to be issued. Don't forget, Illinois was the last no permit state. It was. And it fell in 2013, I think it was. Because the people wanted it, and a lot of these politicians knew there's really no way we can't do this and save our jobs. And then, of course, Bruin came along, or was it Bruin? Yeah, and said, well, these handgun restrictions, these concealed carry permit restrictions are completely unconstitutional. And so these may issue states like Illinois, like California, like Hawaii, all of a sudden became, well, you kind of have to do shell issue. Now, the states have done everything they can to fight back against that, of course, and maintain, and try and keep legal firearm owners from their firearms as much as possible. But the point remains, if now there is a relative certainty that, gee, maybe somebody does have a firearm in my community, all of a sudden that sure thing becomes a lot less sure. And again, they don't talk about any of this. Not one thing. They really don't. They briefly brush over the reduction in force for police officers. They kind of hit it and then move on. But they don't do anything. They're more worried about, oh, well, crime is down. They don't think, gee, crime is down because, well, look at where we are. Look at what we're doing. No, of course they don't think of that. That would make sense. So I don't know. It's mildly infuriating, this article, because again, you know the truth, you see the truth, and yet so do they, but they deny it's even there. They deny the truth. They deny it's even there. And when they do know that it's there, they still won't comment on it. Goes to show you. All right. Yeah. Let's go ahead and we'll move on from that story, because that took up a lot of time, a lot more than I wanted to. But it was necessary. No question about it. In the holy crap, I never thought I'd hear that ever. This is from the LA Times. Now you're thinking, oh, Lord, the LA Times, really? Oh, no. This one's a big deal. And I'm not joking about this. This is actually the title. Most Californians favor proving citizenship to vote, poll finds. Now, how much do you want to... Now, I don't know how this got out. I don't. I don't know who at the LA Times, what editor allowed this to run. I can't imagine that editorial meeting. I really can't. This is kind of like Vox running that story a couple weeks ago that actually told the truth. I was stunned. And the only thing I could think of is that maybe the LA Times has to once in a while publish a story that actually makes sense, or else their readership will abandon them. I don't know. I really don't. Let's read this. So again, most Californians favor proving citizenship to vote, poll finds. Subhead: majorities of Californians have confidence in the state election system and doubt there is prevalent fraud. Well, that's BS. But also support requiring first-time voters to show proof of citizenship, a new poll finds. Interesting. So they have confidence in the state election system. Really? I wonder what the internals of this poll looked like. While California voters are sharply divided along partisan lines when it comes to election integrity and voter fraud, they support they broadly support a politically charged proposal from President Trump and other Republicans to require first-time voters to provide government-issued identification proving their citizenship in order to register, according to a new poll. Let's look at that poll real quick. So you click on the link and it goes to another LA Times article with the headline, Trump's popularity in a slump in California amid abuse of power concerns. So you read down through here. You're reading through. Nothing about this, nothing about this, nothing about this. Oh, that's right. Nothing on here. Interesting. So the whole thing is, the whole article they link to is a Trump bashing article. Anyway, a majority of voters in both parties back the proof of citizenship requirement for registering, according to a new poll from the UC Berkeley Institute of Governmental Studies, co-sponsored by the Times. Maybe this one will take us to it. Blah, 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 blah. Now, as someone who pays taxes, I really have a hard time justifying the UC Berkeley Institute of Governmental Studies. I kind of doubt that's actually a neutral, observer group, given that it is at Berkeley. Anyway, Mark Camillo, co-director of the Berkeley IGS poll, said the bipartisan support for first-time voters showing proof of citizenship stood out, as many of the poll's other findings showed a stark political divide and a majority of Californians at odds with Trump and his recent edicts on voting. Again, I wonder what the internals were, if they actually have it on here. It just links to the website. Let's see here. Let's see here. Oh, look at that. They oversampled Democrats. Weird. Shocking. Anyway, so here's the thing. They try and minimize this as much as possible. But this article has to scare the Democrats scared. I mean, poopless, basically. And I'm saying the nice word there. Why? Because, again, if the Democrats get stuck in this thing where they actually do have voter ID laws, Democrats are screwed. Right now, especially in places like California and other liberal enclaves, having people come in with as little information as possible and basically being told how to vote is one of their keys to success. So if you get someone in who has never voted before, who can't prove their citizenship, and you tell them, hey, we'll get you in to vote, but you need to vote for anybody with a Democrat next to them. Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, because here's the thing. If we can get in, we will increase the amount of money we give you per month. You got that nice little card, that debit card from the Biden administration, a couple of years ago. Yeah, elect us and we'll keep that coming to you. Cheers. Don't doubt me on this. You wonder why Texas people are so crazy about the border opening, during Biden. And then you look at a voter map, and all the counties right along the border voted for Biden somehow in 2020. Weird, right? Huh. So this lead to push Texas and then, keep California blue in the past several years has been due to a lot of liberals supporting illegal immigration. Because again, if you can get people to vote, and it doesn't have to be in a federal election. No. They vote in a local election first, and that local election helps them get some kind of identifying document. And pretty soon they've got a driver's license. Maybe they have a voting history, and they can use that to then get put on some kind of list that, oh, yeah, we'll vote. Don't doubt me on this. Now, supposedly that can't happen, but it does. And then you add in the fact of mail-in ballots being sent out to people who haven't lived in California for years, or Washington, or any other state that does mail-in voting. they still get ballots. Why? Well, because the the state doesn't clean their voter rolls. This is a big thing. So being able to prove citizenship, that takes something out of the holster. That takes a weapon out of the holster of the Democrats to circumvent what the people actually want. Now, don't get me wrong. This happens on the other side too. There are Republicans that play this game. Usually swampocrats, but once in a while you'll get someone who gets caught who should know better and who you would think would be very much against it, but they get caught playing the game too because, well, that's how the game's played in their area. So, and usually, again, those are deep state folks or swampy types, but it can still happen. So it'll be interesting to see what happens if this is covered up and ignored or what. I only saw this the one time, and so I favorited it right away because I knew I wasn't going to see this anymore. But we'll see. I would love to see some Republican representatives and senators, both in California and federally, refer to this and bring this to light and say, hey, look, even in California, deep blue, supposedly California, even though that's only along the coast in the Bong Pipe, right? The San Francisco, LA, San Diego, and slightly around Bong Pipe. Even in California, people support having an ID. There you go. We'll see. I hope that does get referenced. I think it would be a good idea, and it's definitely something they could campaign on. But again, we'll see. All right. Let's see here. Texas, staying in kind of the southern parts of the United States here. Texas has banned. We already talked about that one. Texas has banned the purchase of property. Where did that go? Darn it. I just saw it. Doggone it. What is going on here? Weird. I must have disappeared. Anyway, there it is. Texas House passes bill banning Chinese citizens from buying land. This is from the Houston Chronicle. Let's go ahead and read this a little bit. Chinese and other foreign citizens could soon be barred from purchasing homes in Texas under a bill greenlit by the Texas House on Thursday. The measure, which passed the Republican-led chamber in a largely party-line vote, was significantly narrowed down from the original version, of course. That's not the only thing that's been watered down recently in terms of conservative policy. We'll talk about another piece here relating to Second Amendment stuff in a bit. Lawmakers voted to add exceptions for individuals residing in the United States legally on temporary work or student visas. BS. Dual citizens and permanent residents are also not included in the ban. Okay, I could understand perhaps dual citizens, maybe permanent residents, but work or student visas? No, absolutely not. Why would you exclude them? The legislation will block any other citizens of China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran from purchasing homes, buying land, or leasing apartments in Texas, and give the governor the power to add other countries to the list. Proponents of the proposal, brought by State Senator Lois Kolkhorst of Brenham, say it is intended to target governments and companies deemed hostile by the federal government. Our adversaries speak loudly and often about their ambitions and motivations to break our country and its citizens, said State Representative Cole Hefner, Republican Mount Pleasant, the bill's sponsor, who chairs a special committee on addressing hostile foreign nations. The state of Texas will not allow this to happen. Okay, but you guys allowed, or are very close to allowing, a Muslim community to be built, 400 acres worth, or something to that effect. That to me would be a little bit more dangerous, and you guys seem to be just fine with that. If it hadn't been brought to light, it would keep going. Anyway, some conservative critics argued that the final bill was too weak. Well, yeah, I'm not going to disagree with them. Democrats, meanwhile, have called the bill measure xenophobic and warned it will harm immigrants who are living in the country legally, especially in the state's diverse metro areas. Which ones? You've got temporary work, student visas, dual citizens, and permanent residents. That covers pretty much the whole damn thing. I mean, what else is there? The bill's chief opponent was Democrat House Caucus leader Gene Wu of Houston, who denounced the measure as racist and a revival of 19th century laws targeting Asian Americans. This is a loud and clear message that Asians don't belong in this country, said Wu, the chamber's only Chinese American legislator. My community is so angry because this exact thing has been done before for the same reasons, using the same rhetoric against the exact same people. When the attacks come, when the hate crimes start, it'll be against all Asians, anyone with an Asian face. Yeah. Not all Asian American legislators agreed. Republican Representative Angie Chen Button, a Taiwanese American from the Dallas area, said she understood immigrants' fears, but also said legislators had to balance that with protecting national security. This is not my motherland. This is my chosen land. And I'm here to protect the liberty and freedom of my chosen land, Button said. But I do have to say that, bear in mind, a lot of people will still have fear in their heart. Okay, so Button successfully offered an amendment Thursday evening that exempted visa holders from the ban, a move that made the bill more palatable to Republicans in districts with large immigrant communities. Okay, here's the thing. Again, what's left? You know, dual citizens? Yeah, they're fine. Permanent residents? Yeah, they're fine. Student or temporary visas? Yeah, they're fine. What's left? Illegal immigrants? Well, yeah, I would hope so, that they would be, not able to buy housing or land here. They're not legally here. What's left? I mean, oh my gosh. I just... Okay, let's see here. Under the proposed ban, citizens, companies, and governments of countries deemed hostile by an annual federal threat assessment would be barred from making land purchases. The restrictions would apply only to future sales, not land already owned by foreign nationals. So, wow. So the Chinese have already bought, the Chinese Communist government, they have already had, through their subsidiary, or through either themselves or their state-controlled organs, shall we say, people, or human or otherwise, businesses, that kind of thing. They've already bought a boatload of land throughout the country in areas right next to our military bases and all kinds of other parts. So we're not worried about that, but by God, we'll stop you from buying new stuff. And again, not really, only if you're essentially here illegally. I don't understand. Now, let me put it to you another way. Look throughout the world. In what cases can you buy land in, say, Mexico or I don't know, Spain or France? Let's have a look, shall we? Because I'm curious. If this is so racist and so bad, that must mean, that no other country on the planet, or at least, civilized country, so to speak, has this. So let's see here. What does it take to own land in, say, Mexico? Let's see. Buying land in Mexico. Yes, Americans can own land in Mexico, but with restrictions. Let's see here. Blah, 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 blah. Let's see here. Inside, in restricted zones, within 100 kilometers of borders and 50 kilometers of coastlines, ownership requires a bank trust or a Mexican corporation. So you have to set up a corporation. You have to be, in business. Outside of these zones, Americans can own land outright. Okay, great, awesome. Let's see here. Can own property, blah, 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 blah. through two legal structures. So they can buy it through legal structures. Got it. All right. Yep. Okay. Okay, Mexico, you can do that. Great. Awesome. Documents needed: passport and proof of income, purchase sale agreement written in Spanish, property appraisal and registration. Okay. Awesome. That's cool. So you can own land. Great. That is fantastic. What about, say, in Spain? Let's see here. Okay, so you can. So again, it looks like you have to be able to, kind of have some bona fides to do that. Huh. And I'm willing to bet if it was found out that you had, I don't know, if you were working against the government in some way of the country you're buying property in, I'm willing to bet they would probably take a real hard look at you and maybe not allow you to buy. I'm guessing. I'm just throwing that out there. Why? Because, wouldn't that make sense? If you are the government of a land and you are there to protect the people of that land, wouldn't it make sense not to allow people who hate your country to buy land there? Just saying. We'll do a little more research into this, but I'm curious as to why all of a sudden they're having a hard time with this. That's interesting. The liberals are. But again, it's because of where the money's coming in. I guarantee you, if you looked at, let's see, what was that person's name? Wu, was it? Yeah, Gene Wu. I wonder, he's the House caucus leader. I wonder where Gene's donations come from. I wonder. Just saying. I wonder where they come from. All right, guys, this has been the first segment of the Chris Richman Show for Monday. Let's see, what is it? May 12th. Monday, May 12th, 2025. And I really appreciate you joining us today. We'll be back for segment 2 very shortly, and we'll catch you at that time. Have a great day, guys. We'll see you soon.